This movie is fucked up. Okay. This is one of those movies where it's a damn good thing I went to see only with my younger brother, and only because he and I needed something to do while my dad and the youngest of my sisters had somewhere else to go. They went off to a play that her school was putting on, Pippin, if I remember correctly. This film is categorized as a war horror film, and yeah, that's dead on, with the emphasis on dead. The things that some of the bodies do in this movie are creepier than anything I've seen in many years. I don't think I've been this creeped out by a film since The Nightmare Before Christmas came out in 1993, and I was 5 years old then. Of course, when I went to see Jurassic Park that same year, I went full giddy for the dinosaurs, but I was a little boy watching dinosaurs. So that's a winning combination. The Nightmare Before Christmas gave me the shivers. But not since then has any horror film been able to do so again, until this hair-raising fuck. Now, the story of this movie is fiction. It takes place during World War II on the evening before D-Day. And it follows a team of soldiers, a paratrooper squad, who are given a mission to destroy a Nazi radio tower in an old church before the ships are to land on the beach in the famous D-Day event. There is an entire squadron of planes coming to send down teams to do this. And the very first scene of the movie, you see the soldiers making small talk with each other, making fun of each other. And then their corporal, I think he's a corporal, gives them this inspirational, albeit tough, words before sending them down. A lot of the planes are blown up right in the sky. Now, as the survivors land, they make their way to the rendezvous point after watching their corporal get captured and executed by the Nazis. The main character is a black soldier named Ed Boyce, and he's a good main character, but him being the hero is a segue into talking about some of the mixed feelings I have about this movie. First of all, over the past several years, there have been massive efforts to replace white characters with actors and characters of one racial minority or another, which is extremely frustrating because whether you accept this truth or not, it's still truth. It was white people who built the free world, who introduced the idea that slavery was evil and wrong and should be ended. And the tragedy is that so many people, even white people today, slander their ancestors for not being able to put an end to slavery or racism overnight. Of course it was going to take time. But the British Empire and America spent hordes of treasure and spilled lots of blood, their own blood, to end slavery all over the world, only for all that to be in vain when Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton destroyed Libya, giving slavery the opportunity to return there. And, of course, so many countries around Europe have done nothing to stop millions of children and adults being effectively sex slaves because they're all of the Muslims, and it's all because we're terrified to have the necessary conversations. It's really frustrating, especially for the people who are trying to return morality to the world, to see people ignore the actual disasters we have just because they're scared. We have plenty of reasons to be scared, but that's when we need to act. That's when we need to be brave. A black protagonist in this movie is not really a continuation of the exact same thing going on, as this is a new script and a new story. So, of course, they can make their own characters. But since this population and cultural replacement of white people has not yet subsided, in fact, if anything, it's only getting worse, it's still noteworthy. It's still noticeable. And the sad thing is, I actually like private ed boys, which makes the issue unfortunate, as I've been saying, because if this wasn't going on, this population replacement, I could much more easily just appreciate him as his own character. But it's really tough to forget that yet another black protagonist is adding to the decline in white heroes, who have been so unfairly shit upon that it would be very good for the West to have them have a resurgence. I do like Wyatt Russell's character in this movie. He's good. And the American soldiers are portrayed as Americans should be portrayed. They're, a little bit reckless, a little bit, loud-spoken, but have the best intentions at heart. And that used to be more overall true of Americans when we had much more in common with our ideas. As many problems as there are with the military and the government's decisions in entering dumb wars, or wars that we didn't understand going into, most soldiers do sign up out of a sense of duty to protect their country and the freedoms of others, which makes it all the more horrible when that sense of honor and sacrifice and generosity is exploited, as Obama did in his term, as the caravan of Central Americans has been attempting to do by their sheer numbers and unverified claims of asylum, when in fact the vast majority are economic migrants, not actual refugees. And if you want an explanation of the difference between the two, you should really check out the video that Stefan Molyneux did on both the caravan and the United Nations Compact for Global Compact for Migration. It's a disaster. Some countries have pulled out, which is great. I know he did some work. I've been making videos about it. I'll upload another one tonight. And one of the reasons that Europe is so scared of confronting the Muslims at all is because they're terrified of any rhetoric even remotely resembling World War II racism, even though it's not the same thing. Which, World War II is not the fault of the generations living in Europe or Germany today. Not their fault at all. They were born long after it ended. So I'm torn on there being any more World War II movies. I don't think there should be any more made for a while. For the reason that anyone who brings up a remotely conservative or nationalistic value or viewpoint is immediately labeled as Nazi, which is a terrible and false accusation. The Nazis were nationalists, but they were also socialists, and they were a very extreme form of nationalist. They were not people saying, let's preserve our identity. They were conquerors. Whereas just about all Western conservatives today are more condemning of the actions of the Nazis during World War II than liberals are, for a couple of reasons. One is they actually understand more about what led to the rise of the Nazi regime than most liberals. And another reason being that they really are just trying to say, hey, that's enough slandering of our ancestors, our culture, our ideas. Stop it. And if it did stop, things could settle down. It's the left, the people who are shutting down events and censoring speech and right-leaning videos and articles, who are not letting things settle down. They're the ones using Nazi tactics to bring about a situation that might well end up as another world war. I'm sorry that I'm putting so much political commentary into this review, but we're in a time, sadly right now, where we can't get a break from politics, and this really needs to be said. So the soldiers in this movie, their mission is to destroy this radio tower, and it takes some time for them to get into the tower. Ed does so by sneaking aboard a truckload of bodies of people killed by the Nazi army, and there's this image of these broken bodies being burned. I think the people are just marginally still alive. That's horrific, but it's still not the most gruesome thing going on in this movie. What goes on inside the tower is there is an entire laboratory of these experiments where the Nazi scientists are draining the blood of people to do some sort of mutation and make these immortal zombie-like super soldiers. Now this has mixed historical accuracy. Yes, the Nazis were very science-embracing. They did try to justify their supremacy based on genetics, but it was very, very cherry-picked and corrupted science. And there were doctors and laboratories that did horrific things to people in an attempt to find a way to make super soldiers. But not like what you see in this movie. Not quite the type of fucked up, bone-breaking, blood-draining, zombified monsters of this film, though I will give you that had what goes on in this movie been possible in the real world, they probably would have tried. And it is in this underground lab that the most fucked up scenes I have ever seen, even in horror movies, takes place. I'm sorry I'm using that word so much, I typically don't, but this is what my younger brother and I were saying walking out of that movie. This movie really has some messed up stuff going on. I can't even say I'm giving spoilers even though I'm describing what happens because the scenes are just so much more than what I could describe in words. You do not want to show anyone younger than 13 this movie. Even though I've got a strong constitution, the images in this movie freaked me out. I don't want to give many more spoilers. Most of the movie is Ed just watching what's going on in this place and then trying to get out and then trying to find a way to get his team back in and destroy it. I'm doubtful that I could describe the disturbing scenes adequately, even if I did try any more than I just did. I'd either give it away or... Watch this if you want to, but don't watch it for historical accuracy. This is fiction. I'm sure the Nazis would have tried to do this had they been able to, but horror, war horror, is the right name for the genre this falls under.